What have you thought about your group so far in fall camp?
Man, it's been exciting. Extremely excited about the group. I kind of felt like coming out of spring, we had made some improvements, but we still were, in a position where we're trying to figure out what we got from top to bottom. I thought some guys separated themselves in the spring, and I feel like we've come into the first, 4 days of practice, and everybody is kind of in that mix. Everybody's kind of fighting and jockeying for position, pushing each other, and so that's what you want, as a coach. That's what you want from a competition standpoint. So that's been extremely exciting for me.
Does it change how you approach it, how you teach it, or anything when you go from last year where you kind of had those two veteran guys and we're bringing that group behind them versus kind of finding those two guys to start for you?
I think it's a yes and no. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to sacrifice the improvement or the upward movement of the group, but you also got to make sure that you teach and bring each guy along. You know what I mean? And sometimes when you don't have a veteran group, you got to make sure that those younger guys or those guys that haven't played as much are in a position where they feel comfortable when they're out there on the field. And I've always been, and we are as a team, a next man up mentality. So you can't go out there and it can't be a drop off, or we at least need to try to make sure that it's not. So doing our best in the meeting room, doing our best in walkthroughs and practice to get those guys in a position where they feel comfortable. And then that's also where we lean on veteran guys and guys who have played. I expect them when they're not in to be talking to guys that are younger or who haven't or aren't particularly repping at that time, and telling them, hey, this is how we do this, or this is the check here, or this is how we execute coverage here, because that's going to make us all better.
How does the preparation in camp change knowing the caliber of teams you're going to be facing by the end of September?
I hope not at all. You know what I mean? Our standard is our standard, and it doesn't change for anyone. And so our preparation is going to be the same that we have over the past couple of years, and making sure that when we come out, we're going to play fast, physical, and fearless. We're going to make sure that we fly around. We're going to take the ball away. We're going to be disruptive on defense. Offense obviously moves at a high pace, and they create a lot of explosives. And so that's our DNA. That's our DNA in the American. That's our DNA in the ACC. And it's up to us to continue to get our guys and push them to that level. And then you also put yourself in a position when you make that jump to acquire or recruit at a different level as well. And so now, some of those guys that you bring in may, athletically be in a position where they're trending toward that way. They just got to understand what our standard is. But that standard don't change.
What have you thought of Speedy and Alex since they've come in this fall?
Pretty sharp for young guys. A lot of times, sometimes the physical might be ready, the mental may not, and it has to play catch up or vice versa. I think those guys have really done a great job buying in the summer to what we do, to each install for the defense, and done a really good job of being able to translate that over. And so that's exciting, and it's promising for those guys. Obviously Will physically looks like he's ready to go right now, you know what I mean? But now you got to continue to make sure that you close the gap mentally. He's done a good job there. And then Alex, uses athleticism from a different regard as far as speed, and has to do the same. Today was probably the first day where you've seen him sputter a little bit, a bigger install, some things, they're going a little faster in checks and communication. But, man, I've been extremely impressed with them in the classroom and how they've carried that over on the field.
What's it been like adding B-Cross officially to that room? I know he worked with you a little bit when he was playing that nickel safety, but to actually have him in the room and be working with your group.
You can see why he was an all-conference player in the American at the corner position. I know that's 2 years now removed, but you can see why he's a playmaker. His confidence is obviously that of one you want at the corner position. His physicality, I believe, for us has changed since we've gotten here. He's become a more physical player, and even at the corner position, I know some people think he's more finesse, not us, right? He's done that, and he's done a really good job, man. I have been thoroughly impressed with him, and I've gotten a chance to coach him in the back end the past 2 years, but to see him in the meeting room, to see him come outside and execute on the grass, and to see him compete at the level he has against the guys that we have on the outside at receiver, man, I'm pleased with him, very pleased with him.
What's that like? Obviously, he's been a part of this program and worked with those guys at times, but what's it like kind of bringing a new face truly into the room kind of at the time that he did?
Well, I think the guy that comes in the room has to be mature, and the guys that are in the room have to be mature. And so we preach that and talk that, and that the best guy's going to play. You know what I mean? No matter who that is. And just because a new guy comes in the room, it's not a slight to anybody in that room, and it's not a promotion or demotion to the guy that's coming. And so I think, he in the back end, we're pretty close-knit all together anyway, whether it be safety or corner. And so those guys already had that rapport, but then also seeing him come to work and not come in entitled. Why am I not getting this rep, or why are you not talking this to me, coach, or anything like that, but just yes sir, no sir, head down, let's work. Your peers notice that as well. And then hopefully that guy comes in and he pushes you, he causes you to raise your game. That's what we talk about in recruiting. That's what we talk about in position change. I'm trying to find a guy that can beat you out. Your job is to not allow him to beat you out. You know what I mean? And so everybody's sharpening their blade.
What do you think of Isaiah Wakovia's offseason and just what he did once again to earn 23?
Double down on who he is. The best thing is we talk about it as a defense. We talk about it as coaches. Real recognizes real. You know what I mean? And when you're a real guy, you're not hearing up and down, right? You're that guy. You're steady. You're consistent. That message is the same, not only to yourself but to your guys as well. I thought he stepped up again as a leader in the offseason. I thought he pushed the envelope with guys like Deuce Harmon, guys that we expect to come in and contribute. And he held them to a standard, and it's not a standard that he just talks. It's one that he lives. And so when guys see that, it's not hard to see why he got 23 again. And so ecstatic for him. I love Zay and love who he is. And so always glad to see good things happen.
With two new starters coming in for you, whoever they are, have you seen anyone really grab the bull by the horns and kind of emerge early on?
Without going down the list of each guy, Brandon, like I said, showed and has shown why he's been the player he's been in this program over the past now 3-4 years. Deuce has had 2 really good days back to back. And then again, AJ Davis, his spring was good, and we felt really positive that he was trending toward what we had recruited. He's doubled down on that and then kind of surpassed that in the first 3 to 4 practices. And so the expectation is such, and then, smoke is smoke. You know what I mean? He's been pretty steady since he touched down on campus. And, it's going to be hard for him not to be in a position where he's fighting and competing to be that guy. He played quite a few snaps for us last year as well. And so those guys, Jahari, put them in the mix. We feel pretty good that we got 4 to 5 that are just jockeying and fighting. And so a lot will get answered. I shouldn't say a lot, but some things will get answered on Saturday when you put the ball down and you go full go. Because right now, 2 days in T-shirts, that don't count. These past 2 days in pads, a little bit better. Now you start to see who trends and kind of separates themselves.
Coach mentioned that Elijah Roberts you guys aren't gonna try to play him as many snaps as you did as you did last year. Is it kind of similar with corner with multiple guys versus Charles and Chris who kind of just had those roles?
Yeah, I think the season will dictate that.
Sure.
Coming in, you think 3 to 4 and feel really good that you got depth for 3 to 4, and then you kind of see if the 2 guys like Megason and Woods did last year separate themselves, where you're like, all right, we want them out there as much as we can. You see if a guy emerges like Smoke did last year. And so you go in with that mentality, that 3 to 4 rotation. And as long as we feel like we got a pool of 6 that we can get 3 to 4 from, we feel like we're cooking well.
Is it a pressure? Is it a challenge? But, all the other kind of defensive spots have a few to a lot returning that played a lot. How do you kind of approach that with being a unit that there is the biggest turnover, really?
It is, for sure. And I've told them that. Probably harder in the spring on them than I have been so far, and I just told them, nobody knows if you're any good or not. You've only played a limited number of snaps, so you're the question mark. And then you're the one that everybody's going to line up and say, man, on paper, this guy can do this at D-line, at linebacker, at receiver, at quarterback, at O-line. Who are these 2 guys at corner, And so if you don't already have that chip on your shoulder, we got a problem. But hopefully I can drive that home a little bit more for the group. And I believe you go as your leader. If I'm supposed to be the leader of our room, then I got a chip on mine as well. I want us to prove as a team, but particularly as a position group that we belong and we deserve to be where we're at.
Are they further along than you thought they would be at this point?
I would say yes. I do feel that. I just think, you know, what we do defensively is what we do, you know, but the wrinkles and the things that we incorporate in how we play defense sometimes can be a little bit difficult for guys to really get and continue to be sharp at. And I feel like our group has done a good job. Like I said, that's probably what I've been pleased with everybody in the room. Even, you know, a couple walk-on guys that are there, you know, they've done a really good job of pressing into each other and making sure that they understand that when we get on this grass, you know, the thing we want to limit is bust. If we don't have bust, at least now you got 60, 70% of it done. 30% is what you can do athletically, you know, and everybody's different in that regard.
What are you doing to try to accelerate the improvement?
Well, we force feed it, you know what I mean? It's not, hey, we're going to do a little by little. It's kind of put a lot on their plate initially, see what you can handle, and then we kind of scale back from there because we're only going to go as they can go. You know what I mean? I think Scott and I have learned, and our defensive staff as a whole have learned throughout our careers, either together or individually, that you can say you want to do whatever defensively, but if those guys can't handle it, it don't matter. So let's put as much on them as we can and then try to figure out from there what's best.
Would you say most staffs do that, or is that unusual?
The ones that I've been around have. You know, a lot of that time has been spent with Scott. But I think if you're a smart coach, you're going to do what you're good at and what your team is good at. Not what you can draw on a napkin and what looks good or sounds good in a meeting room. So I think our staff, you know, Rhett preaches that. You know, that's a staple of his in our meeting room as a coaching staff. And that, what do we do well? Let's do it, and let's do it better than anybody else does it. And so that's what we try to do.
Individually as a coach, how have you improved the last few years?
You know, I think I've learned by listening a little bit more to my guys. You know, when I was a younger guy and probably about midway through my career, you're going to do it how I want it done. You know, and if you can't do it or you won't do it that way, then we're going to butt heads or whatever it may be. Now, I don't have any issues with guys that I've coached for the most part. I coach them in a way that I respect them as men, and I ask them to do the same with me. But I probably got a little more soft in listening to, hey, coach, I think I feel better doing this and doing those things. And again, you got to have the temperature of your room and of your team. And if you have that and understand what that is, I think you're going to get the best out of them because they feel like they can come to you. It's like it's being a dad. You know what I mean? If I'm on my son 24/7 and my girls 24/7, my wife comes to me every now and then and says they need dad, they don't need coach. You know, and so you got to make sure that you understand that.